As we saw in the Crito, our good dead friend Socrates advocates, under certain conditions, obedience to the state. For an opposing viewpoint, we turn to the American anarchist Henry David Thoreau. Little background for him. He was born in 1817 in Concord, Massachusetts, graduated from Harvard in 1837, and then got a teaching job, but resigned from that job to protest the whipping of students. He then worked in his father's pencil factory until 1838, when he opened a private school in Concord with his brother John. This school was based on a movement during the time period called Transcendentalism, which was a literary and philosophical movement which involved such, famous writers as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Bronson Alcott, and Orestes Brownson. And the gist of this view, and of course there's a lot more to it than a two-line description, is that there's the belief that there is an ideal spiritual state that transcends the physical and empirical world, hence Transcendentalism. And the way you know this state is through intuitive awareness. One, of course, could say that this has some similarities to classic Platonism, the idea that there's a world beyond the physical world. And, of course, in Plato's epistemology, he has this view that the highest level of knowledge would involve this intuitive understanding, seeing the forms. But anyways, back to Henry David Thoreau. On July 4th, 1845, he moved to Walden Pond, which is land owned by Emerson. And he stayed there until September 6, 1847, and apparently, set it on fire by accident once. And you can still visit Walden Pond today. He ended up being jailed for one night, although in the reading we'll look at on civil disobedience, he makes it, sound like he was jailed quite a bit. And his reason for being jailed was he refused to pay the poll tax that was being used to support the war on Mexico, which he opposed. He was also opposed to slavery, so against the war in Mexico, against slavery. In 1857, he met the famous or infamous, depending on your view, John Brown, and later when John Brown was on trial, he wrote in his defense. Thoreau died in 1862 of tuberculosis and is, of course, still dead today. He has two major works. The first one that he's known for, 1849, he published Resistance to Civil Government, also known as On the Duty of Civil Disobedience. And this is where he develops the notion of civil disobedience, civil resistance to unjust laws. And this becomes something that's later adopted by other people such as Gandhi and, of course, in the United States, Dr. King. In 1854, probably his best-known work, Walden or Life in the Woods, which back in the day when I was an undergrad was a popular read, and for all I know may still be popular. And in this work, he presents a view about how people should live, and that people should live in accord with their own nature, and of course nature with a capital N. So kind of similar to our good dead friend Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, like many thinkers, he was not well known in his own time, had very little impact in his own time. His opposition to the war in Mexico ended up having no effect. The United States ended up winning that war, grabbing a lot of territory from Mexico, which is now part of the United States. Also, of course, in the case of slavery, obviously, although that legally ended, for the most part, there are, of course, legal exceptions even today. His opposition, of course, did not, result in a peaceful end to that terrible, evil practice. Now, he later became very influential quite a ways after his death. In the 20th century, Walden became very influential. As I said, when I was an undergrad, it was a popular book for people to, well, at least, I don't know if people read it, but they definitely carried it around and, talked about it as if they had read it. Now, probably his greatest influence was that Gandhi, as I noted, he supposedly, modeled the civil disobedience developed by Thoreau, using it to great effect against the British. And then later, of course, it came back to the United States with Dr. King using the model of civil disobedience as well. And so that's our introduction to Henry David Thoreau. And now we'll turn to his essay, his work, on the duty of civil disobedience.